Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. So, Rockstar, after years of ongoing controversy over their working conditions, staff having to put phones in lockers and weird things, it seems like they're now on a better path. According to Jason Schreier's latest report, the climate is basically shifting over there. A whole bunch of interviews with current and ex-employees that Jason did basically seem to indicate that Rockstar's management are now running the company like a company, as opposed to the, quote, bro culture workplace that it used to resemble. One dev said that it does seem like a healthier culture overall, and it does seem like they are actually moving in the right direction. The thing is, though, this actually matters for the quality of the games that you get, so this does bode well for their future and also for ours. And on the topic of, well, ours, well, you probably noticed feck all news going on these days, right? But worry not, we are actually behind the scenes working on longer term things, reports, deep dives, deeper industry stuff, other styles of content. One thing we've already started is the daily briefing over on Patreon, where our team boils down all of the important news into a quick, clear package. We're going to have that on email soon, and I mean, hell, eventually, like in a year or two, I'd like to have that in an app or something. But anyway, patrons, cheers, that's what we're doing over there. And with that, let's get into this story. So to kick off today's proceedings with some context, after Red Dead 2's launch in 2018, Jason Schreier dropped a huge report called Inside Rockstar Games Culture of Crunch. And it was utterly damning. It was pretty ridiculous. You had dozens of employees claiming they were working 60-hour weeks, if not 80 or 100, and that's for months and months while on Red Dead 2. And what's funny is that situation was apparently an excellent improvement over what it was like to work on GTA 5 and GTA 4, especially for before that. And this kind of blew the lid off the situation, and basically the full extent of things was revealed. Lots and lots of crunch for many departments in the company, and often because of poor production practices or sweeping changes being made late in the game's development. So there was that, but then there was also allegations of sexual harassment and stuff like that going on at the company that was largely unpunished, aided by a culture of fear that was established by some of the senior staff. Basically, they kind of behaved a bit like a frat house, drinking, partying, engaging in this sort of you're in or you're out behavior, a little bit like parts of Old Riot that we've seen through Richard Lewis's reporting and then Cecilia D'Anastasio's reporting as well. So yeah, the kind of bad stuff that happened in big successful companies. And I mean, even stuff like people being purged from the game's credits if they left the company before the game came out. Now, all of this stuff coming to light clearly shook them. About a year ago, an email was circulated by their head of publishing, Jennifer Colby. Now, apparently, with that, they'd be making significant changes at that time and throughout 2019 to improve their processes. She outlined plans for things like flexible schedules, training for leadership to, not be not being demonetizable words, and then an anonymous feedback scheme and better communication practices across the company. Now, on the production end, they want to predict and schedule game DLC in a way that is sustainable but does allow for creative flexibility. I mean, really, that much should be obvious. It's kind of hard for staff to be creative and make good things and adjust for mistakes when they are on a constant death march, right? If the schedule is the thing that dictates everything and there's problems in the schedule and the management are just keeping you on that and everyone's crunching, yeah, nothing good is going to come of that. And you might think, right, oh, well, I'm just a customer. All that I give a damn about is the product I can buy from this company. Well, even if that is what you think, it's going to lead to you getting a worse product. So even if you don't care about this for the moral reasons and you're purely in this because you want better games, which I mean, it might be a bit selfish, but I suppose I can understand that. But if you're purely in it for that, this stuff actually does matter because it's these things going on behind the scenes that leads to, less good games and lots of problems. So with that, fast forward to 2020, the current year, and the current situation. Apparently, production has slowed down because of staff working from home, but management is now emphasizing that employees should, be focused on their health and that of their families, and that it's normal to not be super productive right now. It seems like, basically, a lot of positive change was actually enacted by removing sort of some managerial and executive staff. Dan Houser, co-founder and writer, he left earlier this year, and it seems like he is a tremendous writer, but I think there was a lot of things had been heard about that. One employee basically said it's kind of like the operation got rid of the bad eggs, and they're not all gone, but it feels like for the sort of remaining problem people, quote, their days are numbered. Now, they've already laid out some better ideas. The next GTA game is apparently to be moderately sized and then be expanded over time. Now, that's a strategy that's worked for countless games with the right approach when it actually goes well. And GTA Online's, of course, pretty insane persistence does prove that model should work just fine for Rockstar and their audience. Now, I will say for somebody who maybe just wants a immersive RPG that does not have all of those sort of more live elements, this maybe is not that exciting for me personally. Maybe for the staff it's better though, and certainly if I think about GTA 4's DLC, you have the biker one, you have the Ballad of Gay Tony, that's the sort of stuff that is happening less now with Rockstar, right? We're not getting that type of narrative content, and frankly, GTA 5's story was pretty, it started off I think a lot better than it ended up being. And then we got no narrative DLC. So maybe if they were working on a more appropriately scoped base GTA 6, and then they were okay with releasing more expansions and narrative content, then that actually could be quite good. And if that was something that sort of arose from maybe changing up their workplace culture, yeah, that could be good. But that said, I'm a bit of a cynic, and there is always a bit of me that hears this and thinks, okay, so, a sort of a more minimal GTA 6 that's faster to make and is a bit smaller, and then, just juice it with online-style DLC like GTA Online has got, which, for somebody who wants to play games to get a sort of a unique narrative experience a lot of the time, yeah, don't care at all. Although, of course, that positive change is expensive for the company, and yeah, they certainly will be thinking of ways to get more out of players with any new strategies that they implement. And it's also easy to say all of this stuff before they actually run into problems with their products, like based on any new type of running the company. And while it's bad that upper management in the past were mandating sweeping changes during the development of the games, and that did have a big cost in staff, the opposite can happen too, right? Where if you follow a schedule for the sake of just purely production and, waterfalling your way through a spreadsheet, yeah, that can result in necessary changes not being made. And I do have a personal story here, and I wish I could share that with you, but right now I can't. Maybe, though, that is something that you will hear if certain conditions are met in the next 2 years. How fun. But yeah, having a flexible schedule and a less exhausted workforce, that certainly is a good thing for just creativity and also for production agility when it is needed. Now also, the changes at Rockstar Lincoln, well, they involve hiring many of the contractors on as full-time staff and making overtime optional and paid at 1.5x. Now remember, Lincoln was the QA studio where employees had to store their phones in lockers and keep the blinds closed for security reasons. And while we don't have any updates on the blind situation, yes, they are now allowed their phones. Then at the other studios, there are supposedly definite improvements to quality of life, like, say, flexi time being introduced and higher levels of communication and just better practices in general. Obviously, though, something like this will take a large amount of time to implement and then even more time for us to see the benefits in terms of the products that are made. Changing the culture that drastically while still keeping the good elements that undoubtedly were there at Rockstar, you're going to need surgical precision. The employees that Jason spoke to were well aware of this. He finishes the report by saying cautious optimism is the common theme. Yeah, all in all, though, this pretty closely mirrors what's going on at Riot, a company that did find, success in doing one thing and working that way, but then, when its culture expanded out to a larger business, it was doing a lot of harm. Now, a lot of the changes enacted there seem to be similar to this as well, with the core being the removal of problem staff and a focus on communication with employees. Honestly, I would say that overall this is probably good news, right? It's certainly great stuff for the employees. Employee well-being is important. That type of investigation has earned Jason a pretty big name in the industry, and he certainly has been pushing for good change, so I do like that stuff. Now, that said, there are some cons to Jason. I think he's got pretty loopy opinions about it being illegal to be, to have a net worth of over $1 billion, because then I'm like, Jason, you know what net worth is. You know it's not cash. What are you talking about there? So, yeah, Jason can be a bit of a loopy fellow, but when it comes to advocating for employee rights and companies not being exploitative dickheads, I think he's doing pretty darn good stuff. Though, of course, like, look, we do have to see how far Rockstar actually take this, what it actually means, and, you know, what sort of impact it will have on the next games that they release, which ultimately for customers is pretty important. Now, as for some devs, like, say, Naughty Dog's Druckmann and CDPR's leads, you know, they can be all too honest about the fact that good games do take a hell of a lot of work. In Schreier's book, actually, Neil Druckmann said, to solve crunch, probably the best you could say is don't try to make a game of the year. It's a bit wild. The industry has learned to work in one way, and those companies, they're going to need to relearn the other way in order to actually follow up on their successes. And to sort of explain this current predicament, crunch is obviously bad, right? And there definitely are more examples, though, of successful games made in crunch than not. There's sort of logical problems here, though, because that is massively tainted by survivorship bias. We only look at the best games, and they're often made with a lot of crunch, but they're the product of extremely skilled and hardworking devs, right? And we use those as examples to justify crunch, but then we don't consider the absolutely staggering amount of games with 80-hour work weeks that were either cancelled or, you know, flopped. Because of that, you've never heard of them. So what we don't often consider there is the bigger picture in the long term. Like, how many employees lose morale and leave for greener pastures? All of the hours spent, you know, honing their skills end up being lost. Maybe they go to another industry, as an example. Naughty Dog have actually had this problem where their departments, like their animation department, they had to restaff a whole bunch of it with people from the film industry. And film animation is different than games animation. So what happens for their next game now that they have lost some of their institutional talent? I mean, I'm obviously not going to name any names here, but there are people who have hit us up on email talking about their stories, not necessarily as big zingers, but just like personal stories. 3, I believe, if memory serves. Yeah, people who like worked in some pretty notable games you've heard and probably played of, and now, you know, work in, I think for 2 of them, different industries, and for one of them, a less stressful sector of the games industry, and it all just came down to them for quality of life, and as they grow older, they want a better quality of life. And this is something that across the whole games industry is a really, really large problem. So it's like, yeah, in the short term, we get these exquisitely made games like The Last of Us 2, but then, you know, what will the games look like in 5, 10, 15 years? Will those companies then fall by the wayside as their net talent kind of decreases? Yeah, I think that improving the lives of your employees now will pay dividends in the future. We've had legions of skilled and experienced devs leaving this industry, which is not good. And sure, there are people who are, you know, do those 100-hour work weeks, but you can't run on just them. And even in the short term, we, you know, gamers, we like complain about a lack of creativity, lack of vision in AAA games. We complain about, you know, I remember single-player game campaigns in my shooters being 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours back in the day. And then you play a modern shooter and it's like, yeah, the campaign's 4 hours and 20 minutes long. You finish and you're like, what the hell? For that price? Hello? What's going on? Yeah, stuff ain't efficient, right? All these things are massive problems, and they actually do impact the quality of the products that we get. So if the future of this industry is to be a bit more secure, it's got to grow up a little bit. We got to work out how to actually strike a balance and do these things well. So the likes of Rockstar moving in a good direction, yeah, it does actually make sense. Crunch has been a hot topic for years, but it does seem like ground is actually being gained here, like things are actually getting a bit better. I suppose hopefully for the likes of BioWare, Naughty Dog, CD Projekt Red, Rockstar, you know, with them being pressured, we'll actually see healthier and happier employees that actually will be able to, you know, have a better life, but also make better games. And if I think about the Rockstar situation, we heard those rumors, right, of 2K wanting to push Rockstar to just pump out more product, get more stuff out. And I've got to wonder if Rockstar know that they're maybe in a situation where if they have these 6-year-long gargantuan development processes that are full of crunch, you know, there's enough like just pure time there that they can, you know, make a big mistake and then crunch their way back into an okay situation. But maybe they know that if their publisher is just there cracking the whip saying, hey, we want way more releases, Rockstar maybe know that if they're working in such compressed timescale, there could be a situation where they just run out of calendar months and they need to be better at getting things right the first time, and that maybe prioritizing, you know, smart work that is good over just a massive death march is maybe the only way they can actually achieve those goals. So there you go. That's what's up there. Certainly good moves at Rockstar. Hopefully we see this across other segments of the industry. And hopefully this means, you know, for the employees, a better time, but also for us, people who want to play games, hopefully it means more efficient development, less buggy games, more creative ideas in our games because employees are less completely strung out when they're actually working on them. So there you go. That's what our thoughts are in this story. Let me know what you think down below. Be sure to sub on the channel. We do have some pretty good stuff in the pipeline. And yeah, cheers. I'll see you next time.